I liked giving head when I was a boy.
Ashley, can you speak for all people who have ever had a dick in their mouths?
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash the Dancing Spartanette Burnham.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing tonight?
Gene, tonight's a little bit of a change of pace. A lot of times when people commission a movie, it's something that has a very deep meaning, something that they watched with a family member, something that was important to them growing up. They're not always the best films. Often they're kind of on the fringe of the best films. They're films that mean something to the individual. And it is very rare that we get a film that is widely acclaimed, that is an award-winning film, and they don't always do the best on Shat the Movies. So I'm excited tonight to do a review for Lucas from Wyoming when he wrote in and said, please review the 1999 comedy, American Beauty.
Well, they wrote in and said, hi, Shat Crew. I can't remember when I started listening to you guys, but it's been at least 5 years. I've listened to every single episode, whether or not I've seen the movie, as well as most Shat on TV pods. Gad, I wish you were doing House of the Dragons, but I'm not complaining. At least 80% of my work week is spent driving, so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's always a joy when the new Shat pod drops. You've given me so much entertainment and laughs. I still randomly laugh about Big D's Speed/Ron Jeremy prank, and always love a good subtle Gene comment. So commissioning a movie was the least I could do. It's such a cool idea for the fans to get involved with one of their favorite pods. I couldn't decide between American Beauty or the Beastmaster, but in the end, I figured I'd go with a more serious one, even though the Beastmaster is fucking badass. I'll have to commission that one next. The first time I watched American Beauty was probably early 2000 since it came out in late 99, and I remember renting it on DVD mostly because of the cover. I graduated in 99, so I was still young and dumb the first time watching it. And I remember thinking it was okay. Had boobs and some funny parts, like Lester getting busted smoking weed with Ricky, busted whacking off in bed, and wailing on his pecs. But for the most part, was too young and dumb to see what it was all about. Watching it in the years since, though, I've come to appreciate so much of the movie. It shows how miserable people can be, even though they've done everything society wants you to do. Get a good job with benefits, buy a nice house, have kids, etc. Or how miserable they can be because they're so scared of not following old-fashioned bullshit ways like Ricky's dad. Have you ever seen a more miserable piece of shit? Or how miserable they can be because they can only make fun of people that aren't afraid to be themselves and not be fake like Angela. We still not only have all this today, but also all the fake lives on social media. Maybe I'm going through a midlife crisis like Lester, because I feel the same way about a lot of things that he did. But anyway, I can't wait to hear your guys' opinion on the movie, and I'm thinking it'll be about a one-wiper. I want you guys to know how much I appreciate all you do and how much you all put into the pod. Thanks, Lucas from Wyoming. And P.S., if you break into the 2000s, you should go to 2006 so I can commission the movie that makes me cry every time I see his children come running down the stairs as little kids again. You know it. Click.
Lucas from Wyoming, you might be the most eclectic listener we have because you commissioned American Beauty and then you're praising the likes of Click and the Beastmaster. I need to get to know you better. American Beauty is a 1999 black comedy directed by Sam Mendes in his directorial debut. Kevin Spacey stars as Lester Burnham, a man who has a midlife crisis when he becomes infatuated with his teenage daughter's best friend, played by Mina Suvari. Annette Bening stars as Lester's materialistic wife, Carolyn, and Thora Birch plays their insecure daughter, Jane. Released in North America on September 17th, 1999, American Beauty received widespread critical and popular acclaim. It was the second best reviewed American film of the year, behind Being John Malkovich, and grossed over $350 million worldwide against its $15 million budget. Reviewers praised most aspects of the production, with particular emphasis on Mendes, Spacey, and Ball. Criticism tended to focus on the familiarity of the characters and setting. DreamWorks launched a major campaign to increase American Beauty's chances of Oscar success following its controversial Best Picture snubs for Saving Private Ryan the previous year. At the 72nd Academy Awards, the film won several Oscars, including Best Picture, along with Best Director for Mendes, Best Actor for Spacey, Best Original Screenplay for Ball, and Best Cinematography for Hall. Big D asked, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. This week, it's American Beauty. Ash, let's start with you.
So I saw this movie in theaters, and I remember when I saw it, I felt like I was seeing something really special. There is this small theater in New Orleans. It's called the Britannia Theater, and it's where you go to see anything that's considered like an art house film that doesn't have like wide distribution. And I saw this there with some friends, and I remember that I understood deeply and related greatly to Lester's daughter and to Ricky. And I just like felt everything that they were feeling about the parents in the movie. And because of that, I really loved it. And I have to be honest, I have always loved this movie. It's complicated now, like elephant in the room with everything going on with Kevin Spacey. Like I understand that. But I went back and watched this with the same eyes that I saw it in 99. And just, I think it's undeniable how good it is. And I was really excited to get to review it for the podcast.
I had the one smoking room on the 8th floor of Manzanita Hall my freshman year at Arizona State. The windows didn't open on the upper floors, so if you had the smoking room, everybody hung out in your room, and your room was basically like a movie theater / place where people drank / place where people did drugs. So a big group of us watched it together. Some people got bored and left. Some people fell asleep, but there were a few of us who were absolutely glued to the screen. We had never seen anything like this movie before, and we took it very seriously, other than laughing at the want to see the most beautiful thing I've ever filmed. That got a laugh out of the whole room, but the rest of it we took very seriously. I didn't even realize it was a comedy until this watch.
Shit, I don't know. I think the first time I watched it, I think that bag thing might have been like, wow, this is kind of artsy. I may have bought into it at the time because when you're younger, you're stupid, and we'll get into that. But Ash, when we did Reservoir Dogs, we talked about, has there been a better directorial debut? We forgot about this film. You actually hit the home run on the first movie. Mendes gets the Academy Award. Amazing. But for me, when I first watched this, it was on DVD in the barracks at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And I can remember thinking how sad and depressing married life looked. At that point in my life, I could never even conceive, why would anyone want to be with one person for the rest of their life? It was something so foreign, because granted, at that point in my life, I was younger. I was in great shape. We were going out. We were being wild. I was living the single life, the guy's single life dream. So the idea of being domesticated and becoming like a husband in the house and the picket fence, to me, this was a cautionary tale of what not to do and why never get married.
So the part of the movie that freaked you out the most of the time was the idea of getting married and old, not any of the other weird shit that's going on?
No, it was being completely just emasculated. To just be in a family where you are powerless, where you have no decision, you have no kind of control over your life, you're just a passenger.
Yeah, but the movie gives you the remedy for that. It's buy a cool car, get a job at the burger place, start working out, and smoke weed every day.
Well, it doesn't end very well. So there's a little warning at the very end there that kind of, hey, say, just don't get in that situation.
Okay, I forgot step 5. Don't live next to a retired Marine Corps colonel.
Yeah.
Let's hit the trailer.
Morning, Jim.
Morning, Carolyn.
I love your tie, that color.
Nice going, Dad.
Ricky,
me, Dad.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
We're having everyone write out a job description. That way management can assess who's valuable and who's expendable.
My parents are trying to take an active interest in me. Why can't they just have their own lives?
I'm so proud of you. You didn't screw up once.
Oh my god, it's a psycho next door.
Jane, what if he worships you?
I didn't mean to scare you. I'm not obsessing. I'm just curious.
Why does he dress like a Bible salesman?
Today I quit my job, and then I blackmailed my boss for almost $60,000 past the asparagus.
Your dad's actually kind of cute. I think he and your mother have not slept together in a long time.
Shut up. You think you're the only one who's frustrated.
I'm not? Well then, come on, baby, I'm ready.
Welcome to America's weirdest home videos. This is for your own good, boy. There are rules in life.
Yes, sir. Don't give up on me, Dad. Smile! You're at Mr. Smiley's.
You are so busted.
I love shooting this gun.
Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world. I feel like I can't take it.
I rule.
If I had to leave tonight, would you come with me?
Yes.
Lester Burnham hates his job and is unhappily married to ambitious real estate broker Carolyn. Their 16-year-old daughter, Jane, abhors her parents and has low self-esteem. They live next door to U.S. Marine Colonel Frank Fitz, his near catatonic wife, Barbara, and their teenage son, Ricky. Ricky documents the world around him with a camcorder while using his part-time catering jobs as a front for selling weed. Frank has previously had Ricky committed to a psychiatric hospital and sent to military academy. After gay couple Jim and Jim, also neighbors to the Burnhams, welcome the Fitz family, Frank reveals his hostility toward homosexuals.
Watching this now in my late 40s and when I watched it in my late 20s, this is probably the most different opinion I've had on a film. Because when you're young, you're watching this, you're carefree, you have very little financial responsibility. It is hard to conceive of the mundane married life, the day-to-day, you get up, the routine, you take a shower, you whack off, you go to the job you hate, you come home to a wife or a husband or spouse that really has lost the spark for you, parenthood, just watching the years click off of your odometer, so you're getting closer and closer to death. And not that married life and adulthood has to be like that, but it does take a constant nurturing. It's like a plant. I said famously in our LA Stories podcast about nurturing your inner Sandy. You have to work on it. If you let yourself get lulled to sleep in that day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year, you can forget who you are. And because you make compromises as a husband, as a parent, and a lot of times you lose that energy and excitement for the future when you're a kid. And Lester says it. I remember when I was young, when I was working at the burger joint, going out partying, getting laid. If you don't have something to look forward to, a lot of times your future looks bleak.
The King Bee and I spent a lot of time shitting on today's generation of parents for being like into Star Wars or wearing onesies in public, getting into cosplay or having Invader Zim decals on their cars. It's like, grow up, man. But maybe we're being too harsh. Like, we shit on today's families and their informality, but maybe that's because we've forgotten what it was like in the 90s, where parents were so focused on appearing adult that they like repressed all the good stuff that comes with being a kid.
Alan Ball wrote this, and Alan Ball is responsible for my favorite television show of all time, which is 6 Feet Under, which would come out 2 years after this movie premiered. And there's so many parallels between what Lester goes through and what would eventually become Nathaniel Fisher Jr., who's played by Peter Krause in all of 6 Feet Under. They're searching for this authenticity that just kind of fades away the older that you get. I remember when I was a kid, kid, I was like, well, when I'm an adult, I can like be myself, right? Like I can be who I want to be and I can do what I want to do. You're almost more authentic when you're in like college than you are when you're nearing 40, because when you've got kids and you've got all these responsibilities, like you're never authentically yourself. Like I was explaining to a friend today that I am maybe myself between the hours of like 9 to 11 when my kids go to bed and when I fall asleep. Like I have less time to be who I am now than I did when I was a teenager. Because when I'm at work, I can't fucking be myself because I can't curse and I can't tell people what I really think about them. And then I can't be myself when I pick my kids up until the time that I go to bed because I'm mom, right? Like a totally different identity. And that's what I think is so fascinating about this movie is that like on the rewatch, it's like, holy shit, like this is the worst part about sailing to the land of the fucking wild things and growing up is that you actually lose all of your identity and the time to be you is smushed so much further than when you're watching it as a 16-year-old like I did the first time.
I love the way that you put that, Ashley, because that's true. You are no longer yourself. You are the multiple roles that you've undertaken, parent, wife. And I think, though, we're going to talk about, oh, poor Lester and Carol, they're sleepwalking to their marriage. But that doesn't give them a pass for how they are as parents. They're clearly unhappy in their marriage, and they're doing a piss poor job of hiding it from Jane. You can feel the tension. They're using her as a pawn to hurt each other. Lester, he is emotionally absent. Jane tries to console her, tries to connect, and she says, listen, you can't be my best friend all of a sudden just because you had a bad day. You haven't spoken to me in over a month. Carolyn puts her down, belittling her and humiliating her appearance and saying, you trying to look unattractive? So I feel sorry for Jane because they're going to fuck up their child. I'll give them a pass. Be miserable on your own, put on a good front, but don't drag her into this because she's going to be worse off for it.
I don't know. I feel like this is really true for parenting in the late 90s, though, and in the 80s. And beyond that, I think it's just like, first of all of you that are parents out there, hopefully you agree with me. And if you're not parents yet, prepare yourself. Like, no matter how good of a parent you try to be, something you do is going to fuck up your kids. Like, because your baggage and your emotional instability and the ways that we struggle, like, even if you try to hide it, somehow it gets like passed on to them, whether it's generational trauma or whatever. So we're doing our best out here. And at least, we're not making them listen to, Bally High while eating dinner. I mean, that is torture. But, my mom used to do this shit to me. I was on the prayer list at church for years because of the way that I dressed, that my mom put me on there because she thought the way I dressed was so awful and so provocative because I wore fishnets to school underneath my skirts, right? So like, I mean, I think this was like very indicative of back then before body positivity. There'd be like, lose some weight, put on some makeup and look good.
I think my mom fucked me up by not telling me I was unattractive. Because I dressed like shit before I discovered glam goth. Like I went through a grunge phase. I had a fucking ska phase where I was wearing like polyester pants from the Goodwill. It took me a while to find my footing with like velour and makeup and shit. So for a while, I looked like dog shit. And I wish my mom would have stopped me. My mom, a cosmetologist who works in a salon, should have been like, hey, let me help you out here because you look like crap.
I want to see ska pictures of Gene Lyons.
Oh, yeah, that's the King Bee. He's got plenty of them.
Oh my God. When I was a teenager and I saw this, I was obsessed with finding a Ricky. I remember watching like, guys, why can't I meet a guy like this? Because he was so angsty and I was like, nobody's ever found me interesting enough to burn my name in the lawn. Nobody's ever thought my boobs were nice enough to videotape them in secret. Like, I was really obsessed with this idea of like this dark guy. But on rewatch, I could do nothing but laugh at myself because this dude is straight crazy and he does not respect boundaries. If Ellie or Finn ever found themselves and brought home a Ricky, like I am shutting that shit down. Now, when he's not videoing, I still found him really adorable and I still found him a really interesting character. But when he's got that videotape in his hand, he just looks like a creep.
In our Ghostbusters 2 episode, Mike Vincent had written in to talk about Bender from The Breakfast Club. I think that Ricky is kind of a new spin on that John Bender archetype, but so much better. I mean, his confidence and his straightforward approach, it's really admirable. He understands what the game is and he plays the game well. We got to just agree that filming people through their windows is creepy, no matter why you're doing it. Huge red flag.
Oh, without a doubt. But Gene, we used to talk about, when you were younger and you used to talk so much and try so hard and write girls' poems and you couldn't understand why you never did better. As I'm watching this, I'm thinking, Gene, this is what you should be doing. You should live. And kids out there, if you're a little insecure, you're trying to navigate young adulthood, take this advice. Don't be too talkative. Be confident. And when he says, I'm not obsessed, I'm curious. He's a man of mystery. He's only a few words. Yes, you should be concerned when he lights your name in gasoline on your lawn. But I'm creeped out at the fact that he just zooms in. She's topless. She runs up and he zooms in on the mirrors. He's looking. He wants that emotional reaction. He is a powder keg ready to explode.
Yeah, in high school, I was more Ricky Gervais than Ricky Fitz. But the King Bee and I have been trying to sell my motorcycle for over a year. One of the motorcycles, it's got to go. There's just too many in the garage. And I wrote this description of it. And it's like, here's the motorcycle. It's a rare model from 1989. And it's got a V-twin engine. And it's perfect for people from this height to this height. And in the last year, I've replaced the carburetor and cleaned the petcock, lined the fuel tank, and put on new tires. I also went through the fuel pump, blah, blah, blah.
Too much.
Erase that shit. Erase all that shit. You need the name of the motorcycle. You need the price. And then let them call you and then talk them into it. And I'm like, I am terrible at this. 20-something years later, I'm still playing the same fucking game. Talking too much. Not enough mystery. Kids out there, shut your mouths.
Exactly.
Lester becomes infatuated with Jane's cheerleader friend, Angela. Carolyn begins an affair with married business rival Buddy Kane. And facing a layoff, Lester blackmails his boss and starts working at a drive-thru restaurant. He buys his dream car and starts working out after overhearing Angela say she would have sex with him if he improved his physique. And he starts smoking marijuana supplied by Ricky. Jane starts a relationship with Ricky, and they bond over what Ricky considers to be the most beautiful image he has ever filmed, a plastic bag blowing in the wind.
Okay, so I've already said when I was 16, I obviously related to the teenagers. I talked about how I wanted Ricky. I was obsessed with this idea of shutting down girls like Angela because I fucking hated them and was surrounded by them. I found the whole thing kind of romantic. But what was disturbing for me and made me feel quite middle-aged was how much I related to Lester and Caroline this time when I watched it. And I thought it would be one or the other, but it wasn't. It was a weird amalgam of relating to both of them because I got Lester being frustrated with his job, just feeling invisible within his family despite contributing. Because I do all this shit for my family and nobody notices the things that I do. And I feel really invisible as a result of that. And then I also get Caroline feeling like her identity is totally lost once she becomes a mother and becomes successful professionally. And it's kind of who's this girl anymore? And am I even that person, or am I reborn into something new and never able to connect to that person again? And it's even worse because am I born into something that I absolutely despise while having a daughter who looks just like me, who's going to grow up and be just like me and see what I used to be? It's this horrible mindfuck. And I felt so much of that because my kid, Ellie, is my identical carbon copy in all ways, shapes, and forms. She looks like me. She moves like me. She says things like me. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to have Caroline's life here? And I thought that that was a really cool part of this movie. And that's what I think makes the best kinds of movies. They're almost like novels. You can watch them at different points in your life or read them at different points in your life and relate to different characters and feel different things. Catcher in the Rye. When I read Holden Caulfield as a 16-year-old versus now, I read him totally differently, but still love the experience. And I just want to say this, Caroline, I see you. I understand why you didn't want to have sex on that couch when he's holding a beer bottle, because I forgot this whole part. And when he's on top of her with that beer bottle, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, is he going to spill that beer all over that silk couch?
Come on.
And then I realized I'm fucking 39, y'all.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Gee, go. I need a pause here.
Mm-hmm.
I need to gather myself.
You bring up a great point, Ash, about seeing yourself in the film just like a novel, because you would think that most guys would see themselves as either Lester or Ricky, hopefully not Frank. I totally feel Carolyn. There is an unfair burden on tryhards, and this spoke to me in a deep way. I want my motorcycle club to plan rides on the Rever app so we can better coordinate and track the miles that we've ridden for like leaderboards. I want the Shat notes to be in like way early so each podcast is perfectly fluid. Screw ups on Twitch streams make my blood boil. I blow a gasket when the hash is out of control on a trail run. When I run Killer Queen League nights, I want each team queued up for their cabinet before the previous matchup has ended. This is in a bar with a bunch of drunks. I need that order. If I miss a Krav class, I feel like a complete waste of flesh, like I'm the laziest human being on earth. Nothing is ever good enough. There's always a level better. And I recognize it's going to be the death of me. And so when I see her, slapping herself in the face and talking shit to herself, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it deeply. And I did not get that 20 years ago.
But Ash, I just want to touch on something you said there. You related to her being on the couch and being pulled out of the moment of a connection she had with Lester because of the couch. We can say, oh, poor Carolyn, she's lost her identity. Where did she go off the rails from the girl on top of the apartment, flashing the planes, having fun, to now she can't get over this picture perfect life and how things should be. And God forbid somebody spills something on the sofa. She has to break that connection, that one connection with her husband.
She is the one who's going to have to fucking clean it up.
Who cares? The fucking couch.
Like, that's what it is. I'm the one in our house that has to fucking clean everything up. And so it's like, fuck you. I just cleaned this room. I got to tell you, if I came home and Tom had quit his job and bought a sports car and I had been out fucking working all day, I would lose my shit.
And hit you with an RC monster truck.
It is the least attractive thing on the planet. And then, he gets on top of her and like, that's all I could think. It's like, I don't care that the couch gets ruined. I care that I'm going to have to fucking clean up the spill.
Yeah, hopefully there's more of a spill than just the beer. Come on, it's only a couch. Who cares?
In the past month, we've had two movies that tackled this topic, the idea of a man who refuses to grow up while surrounded by suburban forces that demand conformity. This week, it's American Beauty, and previously it was Uncle Buck. Yeah, I know they're very different kinds of movies, but think about how much we matured as an audience in that decade from 1989 to 1999. In 1989, oh, he's a middle-aged screw-up who just needs kids in his life to see why growing up is good. And then he's going to find the joy in marriage and suburban life. And then in 1999, you've got, there are beautiful aspects of youth to safeguard at all costs and aspects of maturity that, if you do not embrace and process them, can leave a man being a fucking phoebophilic creep. This is so much more nuanced because there's pros and cons to the change that Lester is undergoing. And I love the way they explore that because Uncle Buck, in comparison, it just feels like such a juvenile way to look at a refusal to grow up.
I feel like this is the untold story of Bob, Uncle Buck's brother. The one who is powerless in his marriage. He's a passenger. Buck is getting folded out of the pictures. I feel like this is the Uncle Buck sequel.
I think Bob is Carolyn and Buck is Lester. Like she's the one who feels like she's been like left out of everything, and she's the one who feels imaginary.
You think Carolyn is the one who's left out and powerless?
I think she feels that way, yeah. I think she feels completely powerless until she gets fucked by the king.
Your Majesty.
Your Majesty gets her feeling seen again. But until then, yeah, she feels powerless.
If she was powerless, then Lester would have spilled that beer. He wouldn't have given a shit. But he backed off because she runs the show.
No, he backed off because he was so turned off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to pull this card, but you don't know what it's like to be a fucking woman, man.
And you know what it's like to be a powerless man.
Do you?
I can imagine it, yes.
Especially like a powerful like career woman. It is a hard lot in life, guys. It sucks. Go listen to the song from The Waitress. She used to be mine. That's what Carolyn's feeling. She's feeling lost.
I don't know how to make this segue, but ever since I was a teenager, I've been a massive fan of giving head.
Oh,
I'd say my lifetime ratio of giving head to receiving is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 20-1. It's been a hard life. Okay. And I got to say, giving head could be the key to saving marriages. It could be the key to saving friendships, maybe even the world. it's great because it doesn't really need a setup. The whole thing with the couch incident, there was a whole setup. You had to do a thing, talk a thing, position yourself, right? Not with giving head. You don't have to kiss before giving head. You don't have to say anything smooth. You don't have to get a person relaxed. You don't have to change clothes. You don't have to find a bed. You don't have to get off the silk couch, right? You just do it. Morning, noon, night. When Carolyn wakes up and she sees Lester masturbating at night in their bed, she's disgusted. And it starts like an argument between them. I'm like, what are you guys arguing about? The appropriate response here is give the dude a blowjob. He's clearly trying to take care of his boner.
Yeah, but you got to understand that oral sex, it's a gift to the recipient.
Oh,
and
I know.
I think it's the first
gift
thing that
don't
goes.
Receive very often.
You see, exactly. It's the first thing that go in a relationship. I think when there's any tension or animosity and it starts to grow in a relationship, that's the first thing that goes. He goes, fuck it, I'm not going to go fucking put that thing in my mouth. I'm not going to fucking waste the time and go do that shit. And I think also people change. Like we said, she's no longer the girl on the roof flashing. But Ash, I want to ask you a question here, okay? I've heard this saying recently that somebody said, women don't like blowing guys and swallowing a load. They do it because they like the guy. It's not in itself a very desirable
I'm the
task.
voice for all people who swallow cum. I just
Also,
want to
there's
point
so
that
many
out.
variables to this equation because you just threw in blowing a guy and swallowing a load, which are very different things.
It's fine. That's fine. I like it here. Let's go with it. What am I answering? I'll speak for all the people who suck dick.
Do you
Let's
think,
go.
what is the percentage of women who thoroughly enjoy giving head and the percentage that do it because it makes their partner happy?
Ash, so now you're not only the women expert, also the statistician of the podcast.
Right. Let me pull out my.
She's good at math.
My SPSS here and run some statistics. I don't know. I think it depends. Like, this is where I completely disagree with Jean Lyons here. Respectfully, I have to really like you to go down on you.
Yes.
Like, I have to really want to do that.
I agree.
And I have to not be pissed at you. Like, I can have angry sex, but I can't give angry head.
Yeah.
I'm saying it as a sexual olive branch, though. I'm not saying that it's necessarily a passion.
She doesn't want it.
No, but I would never use that as an olive branch. Like, I have to want to do that because for me, that is so much more personal than sex, right?
What about handies?
That sounds like me. That's my rationale.
Oh, I could give an angry hand job. I mean, that's easy, right? Because I don't have to pay attention. And see, that's what I would have done in the situation with him waking up. I would have been like, would you, I would have reached over and offered some help, right?
Tuck on his balls or do something. Yeah.
Right, like something, right? As long as I didn't have to move. But I'm talking move down, under the covers, but I don't know. I think that, yes, I do think that oral sex is a bridge. I think it is what keeps things interesting, but you have to like the person to do it. And she didn't like him.
I agree.
And I think that's the hard part of falling in love young. There's this weird amalgam that happens where you remember them and yourself young. And I think it creates this resentment in them for you yourself getting older. So it's he's holding her accountable for himself aging. And he doesn't feel carefree anymore. And he feels trapped by his jobs and his responsibility. And so he pushes that off on her. And spoiler alert at the end, when he looks at the picture at the carnival, I think he's come to terms with that and he sees them together young again. So I get his complaint, unfair or not, but it's I think he unfairly, and she to him too, they unfairly push off their unhappiness they have with themselves aging onto each other.
There's a real wisdom in that because he says what happened to her, not what happened to us.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's Lester, you've changed too.
Or to me. Right. Yeah, you got a receding hairline there, Kevin. I want to bring up the plastic bag in the room. This scene was lampooned probably more than any other in the late 90s, early 2000s. And not another teen movie when the creepy ass dude is just constantly filming a bag that whips people in the face, right? It's ridiculous. But fuck if I didn't still love this scene. And maybe it's because I feel things like this too. And let me explain. I'm not videotaping bags in my spare time, right? I see these moments as meaning a lot because we have no time on this earth. And nothing we do stops that time from fading away And nothing we do actually fucking matters. You know, we're just here and we're meat slowly dissolving and decaying. And we therefore throw our genetic material out and create more meat puppets that mean nothing, although we love them. And they're these beautiful little like surprises that come along, and they're like really amazing to like behold. And I'm not saying the bag is beautiful, but I understand the impetus. Like I understand this idea that like as shitty as the world is and as meaningless as the world is, there are like moments that spark like this insane amount of like contentment. And maybe it's just when I'm on shrooms. Like, I don't know. It's like there's a moment and a beauty that comes from little surprises. And that's why I still really liked this scene a lot. And I know I'm alone. I'm looking at your faces.
No,
and I'm totally
no.
alone in this. But like, I don't know. Like it spoke to me still.
No, I agree. I think also you're seeing it through the eyes of someone who's young and he sees the beauty in that. But I think you're right. Even when he stares into Lester's gaping hole in his head later and he sees that moment that he's looking into God and you contemplate your mortality, I could see it. It's a stupid bag, but I appreciate that more than Forrest Gump and the stupid feather.
Oh, Jesus, yes.
I could see how it could be mesmerizing.
Yeah, it's 90s artsy fartsy crap. But it did make me realize on this watch that Ricky isn't a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I'd always remembered him for like 20 years that he was making a film. He's not doing that. He's just collecting things. He's grabbing moments of beauty. He's documenting life. And I appreciate that angle that this guy isn't trying to compile this into some art. He doesn't even consider it art necessarily. It's like taking a picture, but it's moving.
Yeah.
Lester discovers Carolyn's infidelity when she and Buddy unknowingly go to Lester's drive-thru. Frank, suspicious of Lester and Ricky's friendship, finds footage of Lester lifting weights naked and wrongly concludes that Ricky and Lester are sexually involved. He viciously accuses Ricky of prostitution, which Ricky falsely admits. Carolyn, sitting distraught in her car, draws a handgun from the glove box. At home, Jane is arguing with Angela over her flirtation with Lester when Ricky interrupts to ask Jane to leave with him for New York City. He calls Angela ugly, boring, and ordinary.
This movie really made me look back at myself in my 20s and just laugh. I think when you're 20, you're stupid. You have figured out nothing, but you think you know it all. I think at each stage in your life, let's say every 10-year or 5-year block, you inevitably will look back at 5 years and say, oh my God, how did I do that? I was so dumb. Why did I make that decision? Why did I choose that path? And we get some of this bullshit like 20s philosophy, that the teens will espouse. They're going to live by. There's nothing worse than being ordinary, which I think is right up there with it's not the destination, it's the journey.
When you said bullshit 20s philosophy, I thought you were thinking like the Germans will never attack again.
No, that's a different one. I'll tell you. When you become an adult, you realize who gives a shit if you're ordinary? I don't care if somebody judges me. If I wake up every day and I'm happy, that's all I care about. I don't care if there's 100 other people like me. But on the flip side, this movie does give one adult truth. Never underestimate the power of denial. You see it in your everyday life, whether people can talk themselves into a job, a marriage, anything. People can deny anything. But when you're a kid, you're so dumb.
To be clear to the listening audience, the movie, we realize, is representing Angela's philosophy as bullshit, right? It's her own insecurity based on an expectation she set for herself. I don't think the message of the movie, right, is that there's nothing worse than being ordinary.
No.
I would be deeply concerned if a child of mine chose to become a model or an actress. Those are like two very dangerous paths because you need to be exceptional, but it's completely subjective. I mean, more than anything, you want to be a pro athlete? Sure, let's go for it. If you want to be an architect, an engineer, that's fine. Model, actress, fuck that.
And I think like Ricky, when he says that to her, he's calling her out because he's smart enough to know that's her worst fear. Like her worst fear is being ordinary because in her mind, like she is so your precursor to like these Instagram influencers or, the people who are just constantly on TikTok trying to get followers. Like that is her. And I think it's so brilliant when he like slices her in half at that part of the movie because you realize he sees totally through her. And that's how I think he is like Bender. Mike, who wrote in last episode, Bender sees through the bullshit. And I think that's what Ricky does here. And I don't know, I think it is teenage like ridiculousness, but it's also really wise to know that people their biggest crippling fears most of the time are being themselves or realizing that they're never going to be what they thought they were. Well, and I want to go back to Carolyn here for a second because Annette Bening, I don't know if we've seen a better female performance in all of the films that we've done together. This is our 301st movie. And I would argue that if there have been as good a performance as this one holds up to every single one of the others, because the highlight of this movie, yes, Kevin Spacey is incredible in this movie. All of the supporting cast are great. The writing is great. But Annette Bening, I can't even like put into words that scene where she's sitting in the car having that breakdown, listening to self-help, and she's got that gun next to her. The amount of tension that is in that scene, the entire interlude from when she walks into that house, and it's so funny. She's like, I am going to sell this house today. And then she takes off her clothes and she's like cleaning with toothbrushes and vacuuming the house. And then at the end, like you already mentioned, Jean, where she's slapping herself, like she's so good. And yes, Wes Bentley, yes, Kevin Spacey, we all remember them, but why is she left out of all these conversations? Because the whole film, she's just simmering with this rage of a woman who feels like she hasn't gotten what she deserves. And she's this physical embodiment, this raw nerve of like all of these women that feel like put upon and feel lost. And I absolutely loved every second she was on screen.
I agree with you, Ash, on that intensity. Her meltdowns, they demand sympathy. Her manic moments, they're terrifying. Her hair is incredible. And there's another dimension there where she does pleasure well. We get to see her for brief moments just let go a little bit. When she's getting railed by Buddy, the king of realty, with her legs spread wide in the air and like her feet facing the sky, that pillow talk afterward with her completely loosened up, she shows us that other dynamic side of herself. And I was so satisfied for her and laughing the whole time. I didn't expect to laugh this much at this movie. I know it's a black comedy, but a black comedy with Kevin Spacey in it is bound to have like some smug moments. I expected that. I'd forgotten that American Beauty is like a laugh out loud funny movie at some points. The Ricky Fitz alley scene where Ricky and Lester are smoking weed and they can't stop laughing. It's like an ad for marijuana.
Very true.
I wanted to dig through the garage and find my like 2-year-old baggie of pre-rolls and light one up just to have as much fun as they were having. The ways Angela makes Lester nervous in the kitchen where he like spits up the root beer. Lester applying for a job with, quote, the least possible amount of responsibility. This isn't a pure comedy, but it makes me laugh a lot.
Oh, totally. Or Lester blackmailing his boss. I'm just an ordinary guy with nothing to lose, like it was Fight Club. Or we get Lester just rediscovering his joy for life. It's infectious.
Yeah.
You want to be along with him as he's just spitting truth, as he's lost the facade. He's no longer going to play the husband and the suburban, the role he's been given. But that sex scene, besides being a great, great actress, Annette Bening, if that's her, she is flexible. For her age, her legs are way up there. And he says, you're getting nailed by the king. Fuck me, your majesty. It is an amazing scene. And it's great to be fair, to see her living again also. To see the joy and excitement she's got.
I wonder if there's a term for that position, because it's not like strictly missionary. It's like you're adjusting TV antenna, right?
Yeah.
You call it like a Nordic track, kind of.
The elliptical?
It looks like some kind of like a Krav Maga, like a position. What could it be? It's like you're trying to pin them. You got to come up with something. People out there, there's probably a term.
There's got to be a term for it, right?
Has to be.
Host of ShatMovies.com.
Educate us.
Ash, you're the expert on women's anatomy.
Ash, are you that flexible? Could we do that with you?
I mean, I'm much more flexible than that. That's why I was laughing. It's not that hard to do that.
Again, 2 questions there. One is, are you that flexible? 2, Big D, was, can we do that with you?
Well, I'm talking about in a clinical setting. I'm not saying actual,
do you
having
bend
sex.
that way?
Could we get her in a similar mattress, and could she go that far back?
I love that you're getting into the physics with this. If it's Tempur-Pedic, fuck that. It's not happening. Nobody can get leverage.
Yeah, we need a control. We want to know that the bed, the situation, the coverings, that you have time to loosen up. Yes.
Speaking for all women, it's a pretty common position, especially if he's kind of little.
But no.
I was going to say, as a dude who's had sex with more than 3 people, Big D, I can tell you it's possible.
Oh, but I'm saying Annette Bening's at an advanced age.
The question is how many women like it.
She's younger than I am.
No, I don't know about that.
Frank visits Lester in the Burnham's garage, then breaks down and attempts to kiss him. Lester gently rebuffs him, and Frank walks back out into the rain. Lester finds Angela sitting alone in the dark and tells her she is beautiful and anything but ordinary. He takes her to the couch and undresses her until Angela says she's a virgin. Lester is taken aback and he cannot continue. He comforts her as they share their frustrations in life.
Okay, Annette Bening was 44 when they filmed this. So, Ash, do you think... Gene, are you that flexible, Gene?
No, me no.
Could I pin you?
Nobody's
like that?
pegging Gene in this scenario.
I would peg Gene if he was that flexible.
If I caught you masturbating in the middle of the night and you're like, Gene, I really need this, I'd be like, fuck, all right, buddy.
Well, I know you would blow me because it would put everything in right. You would do it. You would let it go.
Bend him up.
Okay, back to the film here. We've spent all this time on the Burnhams, and I have to ask, what's up with Ricky's family? What's up with his mother? Is it Alzheimer's? Because she's a shell. I know, obviously, Frank's been abusing her, but when we get now that Ricky's going to leave, and he says, hey, Mom, I'm sorry, I can't believe that he's going to leave her, number one, but is this something medical, or is this just a result of the abuse?
I'm guessing it's the result of decades of abuse. I mean, you have to believe that whatever Frank is doing to Ricky, he's doing to his wife. And the difference being that she's a woman who either loves Frank or loved him at some point, and that changes things drastically. I think any normal person in this scenario would have to disassociate just to survive.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Gene. I think that we're seeing like a really tragic story here. And Allison Janney is another one who doesn't ever get mentioned in this movie. And she has a very quiet role. Like she doesn't really say anything, but she is so haunting in every single scene that she is in, including when the dad is in the room and he's going through Ricky's tapes. And we see that footage where Ricky's just filmed his mom sitting silently at the table. It's absolutely tragic and just horrible to watch. And she should have gotten a Best Supporting Actress nod just for the scene where Ricky's leaving. He's bleeding. She knows that he's going to go, and she just has that catch in her voice because she knows she's going to be alone with Frank now. I think it's indicative of just how cruel and dehumanizing this guy is.
One topic we haven't covered yet is this sexual attraction between Lester and Angela. And we should really dive deeper into that because despite looking like a fish off the coast of Fukushima, Mina Suvari is perfect for the role of Angela. You can simultaneously see why Lester is attracted to her in the fantasy scenes, but also how like unappealing and childlike she looks when it finally comes down to Pound Town. I think a really good measure of maturity is how you view like high school and even college kids. Personally, I'm repulsed by them at my current age, but I'm not sure where I draw the line. Like, I know high school is out. I know college is out. Definitely nobody younger than my niece. My niece is 22, and to me, that is a child. She looks like a child. Her friends look like and act like children. If you guys weren't married and singularly attracted to your spouse, what's the youngest you would go today at your current age?
Oh, first I got to ask, where is Pound Town? Is that near like Flavor Town with Guy Fieri? Like I'm
God, I hope not.
Okay.
Yeah, sexy times. Pound Town.
Okay. So for me, I think it's a tricky question because when you hit a certain age, it's hard, like at my point where I'll be 50 next year. Anyone from 18, let's say 17 to like 25, it is indistinguishable to me. I can't tell whether you're a teenager, you're in college, maybe you're beginning your career. So I got to say 30. And then there's also, that 18 to 25, it is undoubtedly, they're the most annoying. If I got a girl and she gave me that, I just want to be special, I'd be like, oh, get out. Get out. I want experience. I will take experience over the young beauty. So I would say 30, Gene.
As a former 18 to 25-year-old woman, I don't think I ever spoke in a breathy voice and said, I just want to be special. Like, who the fuck does
Well, you don't know. You may have.
I think I know myself. The breathy voice is not something I know. The baby voice that girls that age does, I think, is really annoying. For me, Pound Town age limit. I'm in this phase of my life now where like this is gonna make me sound so fucking old. Conversation matters to me, and like people like having enough like background knowledge to have an interesting conversation with me. So I feel like they have to be born within the last decade I've been born into, so that they have like some of the similar life experiences. They don't have to be like my age, but they have to at least have been exposed to like the world that I've grown up in. So I'm going to do a cutoff of like 30.
It's a weird one because I feel like you could fantasize about a person who is significantly younger than you, right? But the reality of it is very, very different in that sense. Like I think if I was in the same room as a person who was like 25 years old, I'd be like, ugh, because they're different in your head, right? You can apply other characteristics to them that make them more mature, more attractive, more sophisticated.
Well, I have to be honest, like if something happened to Tom, like if I ever like got married again, it would be like an older dude. Like I feel like I would never go younger. I feel like I would push up.
Yeah, but I think the question here is Pound Town. It's not getting married. It's who would you have your rebound with? It's not who you're going to get married to.
Oh, okay. So just Pound Town.
Just that Gene specifically said Pound Town.
I'm not saying marriage.
Then definitely younger. Yeah. Well, and not like younger, but like, you know, like, I don't know. Yeah, like 30, 31. Those were good years. Guys are the best between like 29 to 35. Like, I think that is like...
Oh, I was a shit bag between 29 and 35.
I know, but it was probably like a fun shit bag. Like, I'm not talking about somebody to settle down with. Like, you're talking Pound Town here, right? Like, they're fun from 29 to 35 because they're confident enough in themselves. They still get really great hard-ons. Like, you know, like they still like are sexy. They can go really quick again. Like 29 to 35, they know what they're doing. 29 to 35 are good years.
It's like Brad Pitt and Thelma and Louise.
Oh, he was like 20-something then, wasn't he?
I was about to say, he was like 21 in that movie.
Oh, I think he was older.
And I don't need a pretty boy. I don't need a pretty boy, but like...
Just a horny boy.
Just a rock hard young boy, yeah.
Just a horny 29 to 35-year-old.
So... we learn early in this movie that Lester is going to die. It's established at the beginning. And I understand that in order for Lester to die, we need Frank to wrongly think that Ricky is blowing Lester for money. God, there's a lot of blowjobs in this podcast. But much like Paul Thomas Anderson in Magnolia, I feel like Sam Mendes really stretches the sequence of events beyond every failsafe. Like there's just too many things that have to go exactly one way for this all to happen. Ricky had to shoot footage of Lester lifting weights naked. Frank had to pick up that one tape and watch it and then see Ricky and Lester at just the right moment from the windows. And the windows, this is the worst part, right? Like they had to frame things at just the right angle to make it look like Ricky was blowing Lester. And I don't know anybody who's getting a joint rolled for them and like kicks back and puts their hands behind their head. Although I also don't know anybody who's getting a blowjob and does that. Frank had to be latently homosexual and Lester had to say a bunch of stuff that sounded like code for I'm gay too, and on and on and on. All the sequences of this final night, it's just a little too convenient and it bothers me.
See, but I think you're missing some other smaller clues and also the fact that Frank is actively looking for it. If he's looking, he's going to find something. Even if you had the blinds closed and he goes in there and he comes out with cash and then Ricky has $40,000 in cash, he hasn't failed a drug test. You got to assume prostitution. That's a reasonable thing to assume, you know, and the fact that when we get that Lester says, my marriage is a show, you don't mind that your wife is out having sex right now. He doesn't care. Him running with the other neighbor couple. I think the fact that Frank is looking, he's going to find something that makes him think it's true.
You're soaking wet. You live next door. Why would I tell you to come in and get out of your clothes? It's just too much.
I think because he was being sympathetic.
Wait, go home and get some dry clothes. You live right there.
I would have liked for it to have just been the reveal that he was closeted. Like, I didn't need the other stuff. Like, I actually think it's very interesting, this idea that this super macho masculine dude likes dudes, right? Like, I think that that's a common thing that happened with a lot of people in a certain generation that were gay. Like, they went the complete other route and became really abusive assholes. We had one in our family and he was not a nice man. And if we had not seen anything, if there was not any of the little innuendos and then Frank shows up and Lester is standing there and he's in the rain and he tries to kiss Lester, like it would have been one of those like moments, because it would have just made so much sense about like his character, just the arc that he had. So I agree with you, but I think this is indicative. This is your one moment here. This is just like in Reservoir Dogs with Mr. Orange, when we get the whole backstory on him becoming an informant. That's a mistake of a younger director. I think it's the same thing here. You've got to remember, Sam Mendes was a very famous person in the theater community. That's how he was able to get all these really famous people in his first movie, is because he had so many connections. And this feels like a theater mistake. It feels like Chekov's gun. It's like Chekov's dick, right? Like that has to come back up in some way, shape, or form for him to, all of a sudden be gay. Chekov's latent homosexuality, like whatever you want to call it. Like it feels so forced because I don't think he knew what to do with it yet. And Alan Ball was a fairly not as established of a writer as he eventually would become with 6 Feet Under and with True Blood. Like Alan Ball became the most prolific, like in my opinion, just like writer of family dynamics. And you're seeing him work some of that out here.
But Ash, you said you had a family member who was similar to this, very angry. Can you imagine, and I have to feel bad for Frank in this. Can you imagine living your life a complete lie, that you lived in a time where you could not come out, living 50 years where you had to be the ultra macho, you could not be yourself out of fear of what would happen, and that you finally come out and you get rejected? I just can't imagine being forced to live a lie for that long.
Well, I don't think any of us can, because we're all you and I, Big D, are very privileged white individuals. You're a man, so you also have that. And, like none of us can picture what that's like.
No, I'm saying live a complete fake life. If you were forced to, I think it would be horrible.
But I would argue that he's not forced to. Jim and Jim are 2 doors down and they're openly gay.
Yeah, but it's a different generation.
You see, but I think he feels like he has to be, though. Like, I think he's come out of a product and a family where he feels like he has to be. He's in a career where he feels like he has to be.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I think he's a product of I think the point they're trying to make here is, what does the product of a homophobic environment create? Like, where is like the ultimate extension of that, right? And obviously it's hyperbolic in a lot of ways, but he is, the product of what that looks like. And is it ridiculous in its presentation? Yes. But do I think it drives like a huge punch in certain ways? It could have been really, really affecting.
Angela goes to the bathroom as Lester smiles at a family photograph when an unseen figure shoots Lester in the back of the head. Ricky and Jane find Lester's body. Carolyn is in her closet discarding her gun and crying hysterically as she hugs Lester's clothing. A bloodied Frank returns home and a gun is missing from his collection. Lester's closing narration describes meaningful experiences during his life. He says that despite his death, he is happy there is still so much beauty in the world. So I read a summary of American Beauty before watching the movie that said Lester's infatuation with Angela sets him on a downward spiral. And after watching the movie, that didn't sit right with me. I certainly don't find every aspect of Lester's transformation, particularly the fact that he's changing his entire life in the hopes of fucking a teenager, to be healthy. Like, that's clearly not healthy, but I wouldn't call it a downward spiral, because in the end, he's happier, he's more assertive, he's physically healthier, and he says he's doing great, and it's genuine. He was a much sicker person at the start of this story, where he's jerking off in the shower and slogging through each day. And I wondered, am I misreading the movie? Is there something I missed?
No, I think it's an awakening, if anything else. I think he decides he's going to live again, and we get to see that he has a chance, that we all have a chance. And he says, it's a great thing when you realize that you can surprise yourself. So I think that, yes, it is not a downward spiral. And I think that, yes, he thinks he wants to have sex with her, but I think she sparks just that interest in life again. And I think that even in the end, he says, you know what, I could be mad. But instead, it made him grateful for all the things and all the moments that he had taken for granted. So I think, yes, it is more of an awakening than a downward spiral.
I don't know if I buy that. So to your question, Gene, yes, I think that you're right. This isn't a downward spiral, but I don't think it's that he gets a chance to live again. I think it's about acceptance. Like, I think he comes to a place of acceptance at the end of this film, because think about what he does. I think the most important scene in this movie is what he does after he finds out Angela's a virgin. He shuts it down. He goes and gets her a glass of water and he becomes an adult, like in that moment, the way that he responds to her. He sits down with her. He asks about his daughter. He responds like a mature, middle-aged, 40-year-old man should respond in that moment. And he isn't an asshole. It's like this test, like the whole movie, we're trying to figure out if he's a bad guy or not. And I'm not condoning what Lester does. I'm not condoning him wanting to have sex with a teenager. I'm not saying that, but I think that he comes to the realization that his youth is done. His youth is over, and that's okay. He's at a different point in his life. His life is not bad. It is what it is, and it's never going to be what it was, but that's okay for him. And there's like a lot of self-empowerment that comes from that I think is a really cool message.
I completely missed that, and you're 100% correct. Like, I noticed that there was a change in him, but I missed the entire part where, yeah, he is an adult. In those moments, he's an adult. That's fucking wow.
And it's the only part of the movie he acts like a dad. What does he do when he finally becomes a dad? He asks about his kid.
Right.
Which he doesn't do the rest of the movie. And I think it's really, really fantastic. And we've done a lot of pods where we've talked about the afterlife and, you know, what does death look like? And I know, Gene, that they keep you up at night, these conversations we have. But there's something so different here, this rumination on mortality, than we've seen before. And because there's this acceptance in what Lester's saying in the voiceover after he's been killed. He has this beautiful voiceover about what's happened to him. And he's not upset that he died. And he's not upset that he doesn't have the rest of his life. But instead, he's just focusing on what did happen. Not what he didn't have, but what he did. And I kind of hope that all of us, all three of us, the whole world can kind of go to death in that kind of grace. And I also really like this flip of the non-traditional life flashes before your eyes. The facts that it's these images of the things that shaped you, the things that made you feel important, the things that made you feel safe, because death is fucking scary. And so how beautiful of an idea of the images of the things that make you feel the safest, his grandmother's hands laying outside in the sun, and then his own daughter, that those were the last things that he saw, because it's not necessarily the important things, the couches, if you will, Big D, or the money. It's the experiences of those around you and how those people that surround you shape you. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think it's a very surprising way to end this movie. And there's a reason Ricky smiles when he looks at him. He's not smiling because he's dead. Like, some people totally misread that he's some like Jeffrey Dahmer creep here. He's smiling because of how content Lester looks in his final moments. And he sees the acceptance of his own death. And I hope that we all can have that in the end.
American Beauty's treatment of death is magnificent, and it touches on something real that I've never seen another movie touch, which was the clothing of the dead. There's this scene, it's just a couple seconds, but it's when Annette Bening kind of goes into the closet and she's clutching all the clothing. And when people die, we think about the photographs and the stories of their life. But the part that always guts me when someone dies is their clothing. These were the things that a person chose. They collected them as a way to express themselves in life. And whether they were super artsy or very reserved, it doesn't matter. It's an extension of yourself. And when a person dies, the clothes are just there. It's like a fossil of this creature that's passed. It's the sheet on the ghost. And when Carolyn opens Lester's closet door and she grips the racked clothing and she wails and collapses, it's absolutely devastating. Again, just a testament to what Annette Bening can do, but also how smart this movie is to show us like one of the most painful things after a person dies, the way you can hold on to them. She's not at the body. She's in the closet.
And think about how smart it is, because there's a great tragedy in that moment, which is the clothes she's gripping or the suits. That's what she remembers him as. Those are the things that he left to find contentment. And his death, she's mourning what he hated and left behind. And that is such a fuck you to the audience in that moment that hits so deep if you realize the connection they're making there.
So as you might have guessed, Lucas, we like this movie a lot, but let's get to the Shat score. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie took to go to respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is taking a hit of G13 genetically engineered weed by the U.S. government. Extremely potent, but a completely mellow high. No paranoia. Five Wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It is being a fit, handsome, generous, and successful gay couple who have to live next to a crazy real estate lady, her hornball pothead husband, their mopey daughter, a catatonic woman, her abusive Marine Colonel husband, and their son who won't stop filming everything. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for American Beauty?
So I don't think it's any surprise that I really loved this movie. I was so nervous about rewatching it. There's a few that come along that I get worried that something that I thought was beautiful when I was a kid, I didn't really get what was beautiful. And Jean, you know that I told you I was so nervous about your notes that you were going to hate it because I thought Big D would be middle of the road, like one way or the other. But this movie I found to be surprisingly still very good. I find it to be relevant. I thought it was beautiful. And I thought it was, again, just so incredibly well acted. I think that Sam Mendes' theater background comes in here because it is a masterclass in character study in a way that theater does. And this allows us that in-depth analysis of these characters. And it's almost perfect, but it's not. And let me talk about why. It gets a little long in parts. And the biggest issue for me is that Ricky's dad and mom aren't fleshed out enough. I wish that there had been time or a way to dedicate a little bit more time to them and not have such obvious forced reveals for us that they let so much with Lester and Carolyn breathe. I wish they would have done the same for the couple next door. But it's so damn good. It's 0.5 wipes for me.
For a first movie, this is wildly good. Like, it expresses a beautiful take on life and it tackles a wide range of topics. It touches on homosexuality and beauty and maturity and suburban pressures. That might also be its biggest flaw. In trying to address so much, I think Sam Mendes might have overstretched his young wings as a director, streamlined the plot, focus a little more on a few of the more powerful themes, and this could be a flawless movie. But as is, I think it's 0.75 wipes for me.
I'm going to go with a 0.5 wipe. I think it's because the movie succeeds on multiple fronts. You can enjoy it in a superficial viewing and try to get some kind of life message or philosophy out of it, or you can delve into it like Ash and you have done very well. I don't put myself in your bucket because you guys are, his suits were there and that's how she remembered him. If you do a deeper dive, you can take more from it. The performances, I think, are fantastic. And I think also watching this at different points in your life, you can also take something from that. To succeed on all those levels, the performances are great. It won the awards that it should. And a lot of times, because I generally have to watch my movies later at night, I can feel the time. Even though this film was 2 hours, it was over in a flash. And I appreciate it. It was crafted and put together in a loving, caring way. It's a 0.5 wipe movie for me.
All right, with half a wipe from Big D, half a wipe from Ash, and my low score of 0.75 wipes, it gives us an average wipe score of 0.583 repeating wipes for American Beauty.
So, Gene, with a wipe score of 0.583 repeating wipes, that now puts us in the 25 spot with some big films, some hard hitters in the Shat catalog, in the pantheon of Shat. Boogie Nights, Happy Gilmore, Goodfellas, Full Metal Jacket, and The Truman Show. Slightly better than Die Hard, Groundhog Day, Good Will Hunting, and slightly worse than Forrest Gump, The Shining, Princess Bride, and Edward Scissorhands.
Oh my God, the fucking Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
You know who you can blame for that?
I know. Captain America himself.
Oh, it was also Kevin Brackett. Don't forget, it was Kevin Brackett also.
Okay, Captain America and the Sunshine Kid.
The Sunshine Kid.
Fucking Kevin Brackett.
Yes.
Other than that, I think that that's a fair place to place this one.
Yeah, it's a good film.
All right, Big D, moving on from American Beauty, what blockbuster are we doing next week?
Gee, next week we're going to go a very, very different direction. Vietnam veteran and drifter John J. Rambo wanders into a small Washington town in search of an old friend, but is met with intolerance and brutality by the local sheriff. When the sheriff and his deputies restrain and shave Rambo, he flashes back to the time as a prisoner of war and unleashes his fury on the officers. He narrowly escapes the manhunt, but it will take his former commander to save the hunter from being hunted. Commissioned by Nathan D. from Australia, came out in 1982, and Gene, I cannot wait to debate whether or not a rocket helicopter is manslaughter.
Well, Lucas from Wyoming, thank you for giving us American Beauty. And thank you, Nathan D., for commissioning our upcoming film. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
John Rambo, a drifter, just passing through their town.
Morning! Headed north or south?
North.
Now jump in. I'll make sure you're heading the right direction, huh?
You got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against me getting something here?
Yeah, me. I want you to book this gentleman for vagrancy, resisting arrest, carrying a concealed weapon.
They knew he was innocent.
Starting to dislike you. A lot.
And they didn't give a damn.
That's okay, Warren. Don't worry about the soap. He's tough. Just shave him. Try.
Don't move. I don't want you to cut your own throat.
John Rambo. One man who's been pushed too far.
You're finished! You've gone as far as you're gonna go! Heading straight for the top. Right on top of him. There's no way out of here except through us.
He was hunted. Trapped.
There he is! On the cliff!
And forced to fight back.
Don't push it. Don't push it. I'll give you a war you won't believe.
Teasel, you and all your men couldn't handle him before. Now, what makes you think you can handle him now?
Because God knows what damage he's prepared to do.
You don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare.
Are you telling me that 200 men against your boy is a no-win situation for us?
You send that many, don't forget one thing. A good supply of body bags.
Sylvester Stallone. This time, he's fighting for his life. First blood.
Rate the semen on taste levels of 1 to 10. I mean, like, fuck.